At my brother's engagement, Dad handed him the deed to the apartment, for which I had paid $30,000, not counting rent. "Our gift for you," he said. Then turned to me, "Move out now." So I took everything, but it wasn't the end. My name is Monica, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a corporate account manager at a big sports equipment company downtown. It's a decent job, pays the bills, and I'm good at what I do. But this story isn't really about my work. It's about my family and how they screwed me over in the worst possible way. I need to tell you about my living situation first. 5 years ago, when I was 27, my parents offered me their apartment. Well, not exactly offered, they wanted me to rent it from them. The apartment belonged to my dad's grandmother originally, and he inherited it years back. The place was close to my office, walking distance actually, which was perfect for me. "Monica, we'd been thinking," my mom said back then. "You could live in Grandma's old place. We'll only charge you 3/4 of what you'd pay anywhere else in the neighborhood." I wasn't surprised they wanted rent from me. That's just how my parents are, especially when it comes to me versus my twin brother Jake. We were born on the same day, but you'd never know it from how they treat us. Jake has always been their golden child, their precious heir, their everything. When we were kids, they'd buy him expensive toys for his birthday while I got books from the clearance section. When we graduated high school, they threw him a big party with all his friends. I got a congratulations card. When Jake wanted to go to college, they paid for everything. When I wanted to go, they told me I could take out student loans like everyone else. So yeah, paying rent to my own parents? Totally normal in my family. The apartment was in rough shape when I moved in. The floors were this gross old carpet that probably hadn't been cleaned in decades. The walls were this awful yellow color that made everything look sick. The bathroom was falling apart, and don't even get me started on the kitchen. But the location was perfect, so I took it. Over the next 5 years, I basically rebuilt that place from scratch. I discussed every single change with my mom first, just like she wanted. I ripped out the old carpet and put in beautiful laminate flooring in the living room. I painted every wall in the place. I replaced all the plumbing because half the pipes were leaking. I bought a new dishwasher, a new refrigerator, a new stove, even new electrical outlets throughout the apartment. I furnished the whole place with my own money. My parents would stop by sometimes to check on their investment, as my dad liked to say. They'd walk around nodding approvingly at all the work I'd done. "You're really fixing this place up nice," my mom would say. "It's going to be worth so much more when you're done." I didn't mind the work. I actually enjoyed making the place my own. It felt good to have somewhere that was mine, even if I was paying rent for it. Then, about a year ago, everything changed. I was 31 and feeling pretty settled in my life. I had my job, my apartment, my routine. That's when my parents dropped a bomb on me. "Monica, we need to talk," my dad said when they came over for one of their visits. He looked serious, which was never a good sign. "What's up?" I asked, setting down my coffee. "We're in trouble with the mortgage on this place," my mom said. "We owe the bank $30,000, and we can't pay it. The bank is threatening to foreclose." I stared at them. "So what are you asking me to do?" "We need you to pay the $30,000, my dad said. "We know it's a lot, but think of it as an investment. This apartment will be yours someday anyway." "Will be mine," I repeated. "Of course," my mom said. "You're our daughter. We're not going to leave you with nothing. Jake will get the house when we're gone, and you'll get this apartment. You've put so much work into it already." I had some savings built up from years of working and living relatively cheaply. $30,000 was most of what I had, but if it meant I'd eventually own the place I'd been fixing up for years, it seemed worth it. "You promised this apartment will be mine?" I asked. "Absolutely," my dad said. "We're not going to forget everything you've done for this place. You've made it your home." So I did it. I transferred $30,000 to my parents to pay off their mortgage debt. I trusted them completely. They were my parents, after all. Why would they lie to me about something like this? I kept living in the apartment, kept paying rent, kept maintaining the place. Everything seemed normal. My parents never mentioned the money again, and I assumed that meant everything was taken care of. The apartment would be mine eventually, and I'd already invested so much in it that it felt like mine anyway. 2 weeks ago, Jake called me out of the blue. I was at work, finishing up some paperwork when my phone rang. "Hey Monica, I've got some great news," he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. "What's up?" I asked, though I was only half paying attention. I was trying to wrap up a proposal for a client. "Sarah and I are getting engaged. We're having the engagement party in 2 weeks at her parents' house. You're invited, obviously." I dropped my pen. Sarah Martinez had been Jake's girlfriend for about 2 years now. I knew her really well because we'd all gone to the same high school. She was in our class, actually a pretty nice girl back then. Smart, funny, down to earth. That's amazing, Jake. I'm so happy for you guys, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything with my parents, I genuinely cared about my brother. Sarah's great. You two are perfect for each other. Thanks, sis, it means a lot to hear you say that. I know Mom and Dad are over the moon about it. Of course they were. Their golden boy was getting married to a nice girl from a good family. This was probably the best news they'd gotten all year. I'm really excited for you both, I said. I'll be there, wouldn't miss it. Great, I'll text you the details, love you, Monica. Love you too, Jake. I hung up the phone feeling genuinely happy for the first time in a while. Jake might be my parents' favorite, but he was still my brother. We'd grown up together, shared a room when we were little, fought over toys and TV shows like normal siblings. He wasn't responsible for how our parents treated us differently. The 2 weeks passed quickly. I even went shopping for a nice dress for the engagement party. I wanted to look good for Jake and Sarah. I picked out something classy but not too fancy, didn't want to upstage the bride-to-be. The party was at Sarah's parents' house in a nice suburb about 30 minutes from downtown. When I arrived, there were already about 40 people there. Sarah's family, some of our old high school friends, relatives I recognized from various family gatherings over the years. Monica, Sarah rushed over to me as soon as I walked in. She looked radiant, absolutely glowing with happiness. I'm so glad you could make it. Congratulations, I said, giving her a big hug. I'm so happy for you and Jake. You guys are going to be great together. Thank you, that means so much coming from you. You know Jake better than anyone. I found Jake by the food table, talking to some of his college friends. He looked handsome in his navy blue suit, his hair perfectly styled. Our parents had definitely gotten their money's worth on that expensive haircut they paid for last month. The party was going well. People were laughing, eating, drinking, sharing stories about Jake and Sarah. I was actually having a good time, catching up with old friends and enjoying the celebration. Then, about an hour into the party, my dad cleared his throat loudly and called for everyone's attention. Excuse me, everyone, he said, his voice carrying across the room. If I could have your attention for just a moment. The room quieted down, and all eyes turned to my father. He was standing in the center of the living room, my mom beside him, both of them beaming with pride. Margaret and I wanted to take a moment to say how proud we are of our son Jake, my dad continued. He's always been such a wonderful boy, and seeing him so happy with Sarah just fills our hearts with joy. People murmured their agreement, smiling and nodding. This was nice, I thought, a little sentimental, but nice. We have a very special engagement gift for Jake, my dad said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Something that shows just how much we love him and how proud we are of the man he's become. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Jake. My brother's face lit up, but he didn't look surprised. Actually, he looked like he'd been expecting this. Go ahead, son, open it up. Jake opened the envelope and pulled out some official-looking documents. He glanced at them quickly, then looked up at our parents with a huge smile. Mom, Dad, this is incredible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much, I can't believe you're doing this. What is it? Someone called out from the crowd. My mom stepped forward, practically glowing with pride. It's the deed to an apartment downtown. The one that Jake's sister has been living in for the past few years. We're giving it to Jake and Sarah as a wedding gift. The room erupted in congratulations and applause. People were clapping, calling out their approval, telling Jake how lucky he was to have such generous parents. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My vision went a little blurry around the edges, and I had to grab onto the back of a chair to steady myself. The apartment, my apartment. The one I'd been paying rent on for 5 years. The one I'd completely renovated with my own money. The one I'd paid $30,000 to save from foreclosure just a year ago. The one my parents had promised would be mine someday. They were giving it to Jake. This is such a wonderful gift, Sarah was saying, looking at the documents in Jake's hands. We're so grateful, we've been talking about finding our own place, and this is just perfect. Jake deserves it, my dad said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. He's getting married, starting a family soon hopefully. He and Sarah need their own place to build their life together. I looked at my parents, hoping to catch their eye, hoping for some kind of explanation or apology. But when they saw me looking, they just smiled and shrugged, like this was the most natural thing in the world. That's when my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, spoke up from across the room. Wait a minute, she said, her voice cutting through the celebrations. What about Monica? Hasn't she been living in that apartment for years? The room went quiet, everyone turned to look at me, then at my parents. I felt my face burning with embarrassment, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. My dad shrugged casually. Monica will have to move out, of course. We've been letting her live there for 5 years now. I think that's been generous enough. She's an adult, my mom added, she can find her own place. There are plenty of apartments for rent in the city. I could have told everyone the truth. I could have stood up and announced that I hadn't been living there for free, like my parents were making it sound. I could have explained that I'd paid rent every single month, that I'd renovated the entire place with my own money, that I'd given them $30,000 just last year to save that apartment from foreclosure. I could have told everyone that my parents had promised me the apartment would be mine someday. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat there for another 30 minutes, watching my brother and his fiancée accept congratulations for their wonderful gift, watching my parents bask in the praise for being such generous people. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly got up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of Sarah's parents' house. Nobody even noticed me leaving. The drive back to the apartment was a blur. I kept replaying the whole scene in my head, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How could my parents do this to me? How could they humiliate me like that in front of everyone? When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the walls I'd painted myself. Everything in this place represented years of my life, my money, my work. And now Jake was just going to get it all handed to him on a silver platter. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jake. Move out immediately, you have 2 days. 2 days, not even a week, not even a conversation. Just a cold text message from my own brother telling me to get out of the place I called home for 5 years. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a rage building inside me that I'd never experienced before. They thought they could just throw me out like garbage? They thought they could steal $30,000 from me and humiliate me in front of everyone, then kick me out with 2 days' notice? I called my friend Jessica. We'd been friends since college, and she was one of the few people who knew how difficult my family could be. Hey Monica, how was the engagement party? She asked when she picked up. Jessica, I need a favor, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Can I stay with you for a while? I need to find a new place to live. Of course, but what happened? Are you okay? I'll explain later. I just need somewhere to go for a few days while I figure things out. Actually, you know what? My brother Rick moved to Europe for work last month. His house is sitting empty. You could stay there as long as you need to. No rent, just pay the utilities. I almost started crying from relief. After I hung up, I sat there thinking about what to do next. Then an idea started forming in my mind. If my parents wanted to play games, I could play games too. I called a handyman service and asked them to come over first thing in the morning. I need you to disconnect and remove all the appliances, I told them. The dishwasher, the refrigerator, the stove, everything. I also need you to remove all the electrical outlets and the plumbing fixtures. The guy on the phone sounded confused. Ma'am, that's going to leave the place pretty bare. That's exactly what I want, I said. I bought all of those things with my own money, so I'm taking them with me. The next day, the handyman crew showed up early and got to work. They disconnected the dishwasher, unplugged the refrigerator, removed the stove. They took out every single electrical outlet I'd installed, removed the new bathroom fixtures, even took the nice light fixtures I bought to replace the old ones. Watching them strip the place down was actually pretty satisfying. With each item they removed, I felt a little bit of my anger turning into something else. Not quite happiness, but definitely satisfaction. The laminate flooring took the longest. They had to pull it up piece by piece, but I'd kept the original receipt, so I knew exactly what I'd paid for it. Every single plank was mine. That evening, I called a moving company. They came and loaded up all my furniture, all the appliances, all the flooring materials, everything. Jessica met me at Rick's house with the keys, and we spent the night moving everything in. This is a lot of stuff, Jessica said as we watched the movers carry in my refrigerator. Yeah, well, I'd been living there for 5 years, I said. I bought everything in that place. When we were done, I took the apartment keys and put them in an envelope. I wrote a short note. I've moved out as requested. The apartment is yours now. I sent it by courier to my parents' house. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was my mom, then my dad, then Jake, calling over and over again. I let it go to voicemail for a few hours, then the text messages started coming in. You had no right to do that, we're calling the police, you can't just destroy our property, you're going to pay for this. Finally, around noon, I answered when my mom called. Monica, what the hell did you do? She screamed as soon as I picked up. I moved out like you asked, I said calmly. You destroyed the apartment, you took everything. The outlets, the plumbing, the floors. It's completely gutted. I took what belonged to me, I said. I bought all of those things with my own money. I have the receipts to prove it. You're being vindictive, this is so petty. We could have you arrested. Go ahead, I said, call the police. Tell them I took my own property when I moved out. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about how you tricked me out of $30,000 and then kicked me out with 2 days' notice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Monica, you shouldn't have done this, my mom said finally, her voice quieter now. Look, we can work something out. Maybe we can count that $30,000 as a wedding gift for Jake. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A wedding gift? They were trying to retroactively justify stealing my money by calling it a gift to my brother? You're all liars, I said. You lied to me, you used me, and you threw me away when it was convenient. So I'm treating you exactly like you deserve to be treated. Monica, please. Oh, and Mom? You haven't seen anything yet. I've got another surprise coming for you. Then I hung up on her. The next morning, I called a tow truck company. I had one more card to play, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. I need you to pick up a car from this address, I told them, giving them my parents' house number. It's a blue Honda Civic, license plate number KLM 4392. I'm the legal owner, and I have all the paperwork to prove it. The car was something I'd almost forgotten about in all of this mess. 3 years ago, I'd been driving it regularly, but when my parents started having money troubles, asked if they could borrow it just temporarily while they figured out their transportation situation. We'll get our own car soon, my dad had promised. We just need something to get to work for a few months. That was 3 years ago. I'd bought myself a new car and let them keep using the Honda. I was still paying the insurance on it, still the legal owner, but I'd basically given it to them. Another one of my many generous gestures that they'd apparently forgotten about. Well, if they wanted to play the what's yours is mine game, I could play it too. The tow truck driver called me an hour later. Ma'am, I've got your car. There was an older couple who came out screaming about it, but I showed them the paperwork. They couldn't do anything about it. Perfect, I said, bring it to this address. I gave him Rick's house number. 15 minutes after the car arrived, my phone started exploding with calls again. I didn't answer any of them, but the text messages were hilarious. You can't just steal our car, we need that car for work. We don't have money for another car, you're being a terrible person. My brother sent me the best one, you're a complete bastard, don't bother coming to my wedding. That one actually made me laugh out loud. I blocked all their numbers after that. I was done listening to their complaints. 3 weeks later, I put the Honda up for sale. It was in great condition, only had about 60,000 miles on it, and I'd kept up with all the maintenance. I listed it for $12,000, which was a fair price for a 3-year-old car. It sold within a week. When I deposited that check, I smiled for the first time in months. $12,000. Not quite the $30,000 they'd stolen from me, but it was something. It was a start. About 2 weeks after that, I got a call from Sarah. I recognized her number immediately since we'd stayed in touch over the years and texted pretty regularly. Hey Sarah, I said, surprised to hear from her. Monica, I really need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? We met at a coffee shop downtown. Sarah looked tired, stressed, nothing like the engagement party. Your parents told me everything, she said as soon as we sat down. About what happened with the apartment. They're blaming everything on you, saying you're being vindictive and trying to destroy their family. I raised an eyebrow. And what did Jake say? Sarah's face darkened. He agreed with them completely. He called you greedy and vindictive. He said you were just trying to cause trouble because you were jealous of our relationship. And what did you think about all that? Monica, I knew you lived in your parents' apartment. I've been there to visit you plenty of times over the years. But I had no idea you'd paid $30,000 to save it from foreclosure. I had no idea you'd renovated the entire place with your own money, that you'd been paying rent all these years. Well, now you do, I said. I can't marry him, Sarah said suddenly. I can't marry into a family that would do something like this. And Jake, the way he talked about you, his own sister, it made me sick. I looked at her carefully. Sarah, you need to make your own decision about this. Don't let my situation influence what you want to do with your life. It's not just your situation, she said, it's how they all handled it. Your parents lied to you, stole from you, and then acted like you were the problem. And Jake just went along with it. He didn't even try to make it right. No, he didn't, I agreed. Sarah left after that, and I didn't hear from her again. But about a month later, my Aunt Linda called me. Monica, I thought you should know, she said. Sarah broke up with Jake. The wedding is off. Really? Really, she called off the engagement last week. Your parents and Jake are furious. They're blaming you, saying you poisoned her against them. Of course they are, I said. God forbid they take responsibility for their own actions. How are you doing, honey? Linda asked. Are you okay? I'm actually doing great, I said, and I meant it. I'm living in a nice house rent-free. I'm saving money faster than I have in years, and I don't have to deal with their drama anymore. Good for you, Linda said. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. That conversation happened 6 months ago. I'm still living in Rick's house, keeping it clean and paying the utilities. Jessica says her brother is happy in Europe and has no plans to come back anytime soon, so I can stay as long as I need to. I've been saving money like crazy. Without rent payments, I'm able to put away almost twice as much as I used to. I've already saved up enough for a down payment on my own place, and I'm looking at condos in a nice part of town. My parents and Jake have tried to contact me through other relatives a few times, but I've made it clear that I'm not interested in reconciliation. They made their choice when they decided to lie to me and steal from me. I've made mine. Do I miss having a family? Sometimes. But I don't miss the constant feeling of being second best. I don't miss being used and manipulated. I don't miss being treated like I don't matter. I've started thinking of Jake's broken engagement as a bonus. I didn't plan for that to happen, but I'm not sorry it did. Sarah deserved better than to marry into a family of liars and thieves. And Jake deserved to lose something he cared about, just like I did. Am I angry? Not really, not anymore. I'm disappointed, sure, I'm hurt by how easily they threw me away. But mostly, I'm just relieved to be free of them. They can keep their lies and their favoritism and their games. I've got my own life to build now, and I'm going to make sure it's a good one.